Hello, you're listening to Hugo Talks. So yes, what is the secret of the mRNA? That's the question this doctor who has contacted me has tried to ask, and they don't want to tell him. So I was contacted by Dr. Lee Proctor, PhD, BSc. He says that he made a freedom of information request to the MHRA. So I don't know if you've heard about this, but it is curious, especially when this person lends some extra information to it. This fella, Dr. Lee Proctor, says that he is a director and co-owner of a successful company that out-licenses technology to the pharmaceutical industry. He says, I have developed technology that is used to produce many of the world's most important drugs, particularly for HIV, cholesterol, and blood pressure. And that he has been involved in the industry for over 25 years. He recently made a Freedom of Information request to the MHRA for the full nucleotide base sequence of the mRNA of all the COVID vaccines, including Pfizer and Moderna. And he also asked, can you provide the full nucleotide base sequence used in the recombinant DNA of the Oxford, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson vaccines? And this was their response. They said, thank you, Mr. Proctor, regarding your request for the various base sequence of mRNA for all the vaccines, etc., etc. And basically, they just say no. They say all of the jabs are exempt under Section 41, information provided in confidence, and Section 43, commercial interests of the Freedom of Information Act. Section 41 is an absolute exemption and no consideration of the public interest is required, they say, except to state that we consider its disclosure to constitute an actionable breach of confidence. Section 43 is a qualified exemption and a consideration of the public interest should be made. We have considered the public interest and cannot see any public interest argument that outweighs the commercial harm in providing commercial secrets to competitors who would be able to use this information to aid the development of their own rival product. Now, the doctor was shocked at this response. He says, the government are injecting the public with RNA, and yet the same government via its regulatory authority, the MHRA, state the public has no right to know what the RNA is in order to protect the commercial interests of the companies who developed it. He says this demonstrates a profound lack of transparency. He says the RNA is the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the API, in the vaccine injection. That means it is the one ingredient that produces the biological response and creates the intended effects. He says, I have been involved in this industry for over 25 years and I know of no other examples where the full chemical structure of the API for any drug product is not freely available in the public domain. He then goes on to state that the reason to not give this full information in order to protect the big pharma companies from someone stealing, say, their recipe, so to speak, is a load of nonsense. As he states, all of the innovator pharma companies have full and rigorous international patent protection on all of the products they ever develop. Otherwise, they'd never make any money. He goes on to say, I find it incredulous the government can promote vaccination to all UK citizens aged 16 and older, to mandate vaccination under certain circumstances, and to have an NHS vaccine passport system to enable entry to select public places and events, and yet the actual chemical substance, the RNA sequence of the API, is being actively withheld from the public's knowledge in the guise of company confidentiality. He says, think about this. The government will happily suspend your rights and liberties, but gladly uphold the intellectual property rights of the big pharma companies and corporations who have developed the jabs. How can any individual give their informed consent to vaccination when the government refuses to tell them exactly what they are being injected with. So there you go. What's interesting here is that, as the doctor claims, there has never been a pharmaceutical product in the UK where the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the main ingredient, has been willfully withheld from public disclosure. So not only are the mRNA jabs had never been used on the public before, have had no long-term tests, and are only licensed for emergency use, when basically there is no emergency, is there? And they want everybody to have these experimental jabs with no long-term tests. They're threatening people with losing their jobs, pressurizing every man, woman and child to get them, introducing passports to get people to have them, and they refuse to disclose the base sequence of the mRNA to this doctor, the key element of the jab ingredients, and they refuse to disclose it. And that also has never happened before. It's never happened before that a drug has come out and they've refused to disclose what's in it. If you're not suspicious by now, you should be. So what is the big secret? Why are they hiding the base sequence of the active ingredient? As always, thanks for listening. Come and subscribe to HugoTalks.com, a place for like-minded souls who don't follow the fake stream media.